Hello, and welcome to the June 15th Ampleforth Community Office Hours. Lots of things happening this week and a lot of really exciting developments. So let's dive right into things before we get into the Team AMA session. First and foremost, want to recognize a very auspicious milestone that happened this week. The Ampleforth Protocol celebrated its third birthday. This has been a really interesting ride to date, and we're very excited for many, many years ahead. Ampleforth was launched, in the middle of the last crypto winter, and I think through a very diverse array of markets, it's proven, incredible durability over time. And I know I speak for the core team when I point to the rebase uptime number that is on the screen here. It's 0.999, and then a lot of other numbers into percent uptime. It's a really impressive milestone that I think would pass muster even at the most rigorous enterprises that are looking at uptime requirements. So really a testament to the team and the protocol and this community that has really championed it through thick and thin. Speaking of auspicious milestones, something that we've been teasing and alluding to for a while came to fruition last week. AMPL is now listed on Coinbase. This is a really, really exciting moment for the project. It has never been easier or more accessible for anybody to enter the Ampleforth ecosystem. For those who might not be as well versed or comfortable working on a DEX like a Uniswap, you can now access Ampleforth via AMPL on Coinbase. So really exciting, and really looking forward to seeing this project grow. Now we want to shift gears a little bit and talk about Spot, which I know is a very popular topic of conversation and a lot of questions still from this community. We've provided a number of updates in recent weeks on the engineering side, and there's a lot of great work happening there and some very exciting updates to come even in the upcoming weeks, so stay tuned. We also wanted to point to what we're doing on the marketing side. I think there have been some really good and thoughtful questions from the community, and really want to convey that this is a major, if not the major focus, for the core team from a marketing perspective going forward is introducing Spot to the market, really as a complement to Ampleforth and AMPL. If you think about AMPL as the more academic, thoughtful, perhaps even restrained party, Spot is maybe the more playful, accessible counterpart that exists in the same ecosystem, but that has, frankly, a much simpler value prop that we think is going to appeal to a larger audience when we talk about a digital cash and how that complements Bitcoin as digital gold. And it's really just a fun brand to introduce. So I want to share just a couple of initial updates here with what we're working on. So first and foremost, next week, we are going to be launching a website. We were able to secure the spot.cash domain, which is a very exciting one. I'm really glad we got it. You'll notice a very different, deliberately so look from the Ampleforth website, which again, if that's more of a university ethos, this is more, we've talked internally like almost Adult Swim meets crypto. There's a lot of really thoughtful, substantive content that we're going to be pushing out here, but we also see a real opportunity to differentiate visually and really appeal to, I think, new demographics that are going to recognize this as something that really stands out on its own and different. Beyond the website, we are also engaging in broader digital marketing efforts, including launching an Instagram channel. And this is just going to be the first step in a much larger digital journey for Spot. Want to just share a little bit of rationale with this group, and happy to discuss further, and certainly would love input as we go on. So why are we doing Instagram initially for Spot? First and foremost, because we're going to expand Ampleforth's footprint to new channels. As everyone here knows, certainly Discord is a big channel, Telegram, perhaps less active than it used to be, but still a very large, tens of thousands of person community. Twitter, we see a ton of engagement. Instagram is really, a rock that we've yet to turn over, if you will. There is a lot of great, content happening there, a lot of great engagement, higher engagement rates, than Twitter on average. So when we're looking at a new project like Spot that really is meant to expand brand awareness and get more people involved in this project, in this ecosystem, there's a great opportunity there. Instagram is also the best channel for hubbing multimedia content, that is easy to access on the long term, with the possible exception of YouTube for longer form videos, but that's not what we're doing here. As you probably noted in recent months, we've really invested a lot more time and effort into more video content, more GIFs, increasingly more just custom images. And we want to make sure we have an easy hub for them on Instagram, where we can easily extend it to Twitter, to TikTok, where we're increasingly experimenting and looking into opportunities, and other channels. So by no means is this, a zero-sum game where Instagram is the be-all, end-all, but it's a beachhead for Spot. And we're really excited to see how this goes and how it expands. To that end, I also want to call out Liza Sweeney, who has recently joined the team as a digital marketing expert and a designer to boot. She's going to be driving a lot of these efforts. She had previously held a senior digital role at Mission North, a major Silicon Valley communications firm, and she's worked with brands from Betterment to Gemini to many others. And we're very excited to tap into her experience and expertise in this realm as we build Spot. And then I guess just a final note on the how as well. Similar to Spot as a whole, this is not meant to be an in the weeds channel. We're not going to get into the mechanics of rebasing necessarily on Instagram. It's more, let's tap into broader conversations that are happening on things like inflation, which is certainly top of mind now, and other topics, and really introduce basic monetary economic principles. So what is this going to look like? There's going to be a variety of forms and designs that we put out there, but did want to share just an initial preview of some of the images that we're going to begin rolling out next week. We've got a large and growing library that, again, with the expertise and guidance of Liza, will optimize the right, channels at the right time, have different sort of carousels and slideshows with calls to action. And you can see a mix here of, fun dog memes, because those never get old and they drive massive engagement. Tapping into really kind of visualizing inflation, what it looks like, what it means for you personally. But then also, being able to cherry pick great content from Twitter. So, here's a good example from Evan. And you see this all the time if you spend any time on Instagram. It's, here's a smart or thoughtful or funny or memorable tweet. We're going to, sort of lionize it on Instagram so that it's easier to find and has a longer shelf life. This is going to be a great way to ensure that we're really maximizing viewership of these types of posts. So I know this has been a lot on the marketing front, but again, we've heard your feedback, we've seen it in recent weeks. We really appreciate it, and do want to provide a greater level of transparency just into where we're going, what we're working on, and really to open the floor for feedback. So thank you to everybody as always, and with that, let's open up the floor.
Awesome, thanks, Matt. Definitely check out those slides; they're great this week. A lot of sneak peek as far as some of the imagery, some of the design work, a little bit of a preview of what we've been working on towards Instagram. And yeah, it's a good slide to check out this week. So we can hop over into the Q&A. Unless there was one, let me flip back over here. Unless there was anything we wanted to speak about on the core contributor front. Yeah, go ahead.
Just on a high level, I think you guys probably noticed that last Friday, the inflation report came in pretty hot. And so we're looking at greater than expected interest rate hikes from the Fed. And just sitting back and thinking about it, more than anything, this kind of underscores the importance of creating, an inflation-resistant refuge from volatility, which is pretty much what Spot is. But there's just so many people out there complaining about crypto not having delivered on any sort of utility whatsoever. And of course, the definition of utility has kind of evolved over time, everything from the concept of payments, so that you can buy coffee, to some sort of, platform for creating basically Web2 apps on Web3, to digital collectibles. And just thinking back and looking at it from 1,000 feet away, it really does seem like the utility that was promised, like, an inflation-resistant store of value, a peer-to-peer digital cash, that's what hasn't been delivered. And I can't help but think that if Spot were out there, if we had launched this 2 years ago, if we knew how to do this, that the conversation might be a little bit different around those sorts of criticisms. And I just kind of want to start with that thought there.
I think internally you've got good consensus on that as an idea. It sort of starts with, Satoshi and his quote and what he was able to do and what he wasn't able to do when he launched Bitcoin. And then obviously things came along like oracles and other things, and AMPL was able to come along. And then obviously once AMPL existed, could move into the world of Spot. But we talk about that a lot internally. It would be really interesting to see what other people think from the community on that, if that was a plausible possible outcome, and how they feel Spot might relate to the world differently than, say, AMPL. So I'd keep an eye out for any feedback from you all.
Yeah, whole moving definition of utility was pretty frustrating to deal with, where, everybody was like talking about, like, again, like the fact that if it couldn't be used for payments, it wasn't worthwhile, or, if it wasn't some sort of AWS like service, it wouldn't be worthwhile, or, kind of just the venture capital definition of utility. But I think it's really apparent right now that if there were kind of some sort of inflation resistant cryptocurrency that was reliable, that had well understood risks, people might be kind of flocking toward that and saying, like, holy cow, crypto delivered. And I'm not really sure that we need a whole lot more. Like, a lot of the other stuff does kind of sound like window dressing. There's almost universes of ideas that don't really make sense, but this one's important.
Right. I guess the only other item to flag is conditions can't be affected, and timing can't exactly be affected either. If you think of what spot may be able to do in terms of being inflation resistant, it's hard to pick a better time in many of our lifetimes to have something to offer. It's obviously top of mind to everyone.
Yeah.
So
it's a huge missing puzzle piece in our global economy. And even though spot is going to have to start really small, the ideas behind it are going to be big. I see a comment here from Nestor: spot is confusing as hell. I think that once the paper's out there, it might be a lot less confusing. I've had a lot of really fast and easy success explaining spot specifically to people who are familiar with banking and finance. So I was saying this to Brandon and the other guys on the call earlier today, that when we launched AMPL, very few people had the background knowledge to understand that the population of money nerds out there, people who understand money, is actually considerably smaller than the population of people who understand banking and financial products. And this much larger educated group of people who really can see straight when it comes to banking and financial products is a really important demographic to go after. Even if they're not the most vocal people on Twitter, they're the types of folks who, after a 15-20-minute conversation, can not only understand spot, but can defend it because they've been juggling these puzzle pieces all along. And by the way, these are some of the people who would have immediately looked at some of the designs we looked at, like the USTs and the basis caches and all these other things, and been like, well, that makes no sense whatsoever. They've just kind of been sitting back. Maybe they've been commenting. Maybe nobody's been listening. I'm sure they've been buying crypto. But there are tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of finance professionals who would be able to understand spot very quickly, I think more easily than many of these other protocols that exist out there. And so we'll do our best to kind of simplify the how of how spot works, but also kind of just engage other people who really do understand it to help explain it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think one nice property about the spot architecture is that it's made up of a small number of really well-defined pieces, each of which is pretty simple, right? A lot of the ideas underpinning spot are not out of nowhere. They're kind of built off of like core ideas that already exist in finance for a long time, the way of like segmenting the risk and that sort of thing. But when you see all the pieces come together, when you understand each of those little modules, you see how elegant it is when they all come together the way they are. It shows off the strengths of AMPL, I think, in a really interesting way that marries both the financial side and this just sort of technical architecture side.
If you understand
each of the pieces, then it's actually pretty easy to see how they fit together. So like, I remember the first time where the first conversations that I remember being a part of, when I did see them all come together, it was like a light bulb going off. And so I wanted to see if we can replicate that feeling in as many different people as possible.
Yeah, I would echo that actually spot is very simple if you understand some of the building blocks. And again, to Brandon's point, we're not creating these conceptual building blocks from scratch, right? So maybe for folks whose first introduction into this kind of field is technical, they have to first understand tranching, right? And then think about what you might do with kind of these kind of tranches and so on. But for these banking professionals, it's just a word that they really understand very well, know how to apply. I've seen it in a range of scenarios, and then we can very quickly get into a discussion of like, why we use proportional redemption, or like what happens, how runnable is spot, right? And what are the various degradation scenarios that we're looking at here? They're not, many folks are not scared by the idea of a perpetual note. Again, even that is not something that we're inventing. It just feels new to folks in the crypto space who have kind of reinvented their own vocabulary and have their own kind of understanding of things. And so I think for some people, there'll be a little bit of a learning curve just as you're getting up to speed on some of these building blocks. And for others, they will hear about it and completely run with an understanding of it.
That's right. I guess one easy to understand example is a lot of folks don't know how an internal combustion engine works, but they know why and how to use their car. So we're going to need a lot of folks, especially the people in this community who understand AMPL, who understand these concepts, and can dig into the materials that are going to come out on spot to help explain how it works, but why it works and what it achieves. You don't exactly have to understand how it works in order for you to use it. Just like you don't have to understand how a cell phone works or a computer or a car or a plane to use those things. So that's one thing. And another thing which we sort of saw with AMPL was the other way. Sometimes feeling, using, and touching, like the rebase as a concept, is hard for some people to grok, but then they get AMPL, they live through a rebase, they understand what it is and what it does, and they can learn from there. So there's these things that aren't alive in the world yet. For example, all the materials on spot or spot itself to interact with. But as more things are delivered, it'll get that much easier. And you as the core community, the better armed you are. And you can tell some folks that who also have the domain knowledge to understand this, that's going to help quite a lot. Starting with a nice group of folks who can grok it makes a lot of sense and can help grow, because then it can put the proper light around it.
Yeah, I would say, some things are similar between Spot and AMPL. Like, they're both built on concepts that predate us. It just so happens that the concepts that AMPL are built on top of, like, a unit of account, right? Why would you want an inflation-resistant price target? Supply elasticity. What are the virtues and vices of fixed supply commodity monies? Like, this is information that, we didn't come up with. This is information that is near and dear and well understood to a very small population of people. And those are the ones that grok AMPL, not just like the feeling of getting more or fewer tokens. Those are kind of concepts that appeal to people who grok AMPL holistically. Not unlike that, with Spot, it's standing on top of concepts as well, like the idea of a perpetual claim on, a collateral, right? Or tranching, right? These are things that a greater number of people really understand well conceptually, and we get to now tap into those. I did see a question here, which is, can the AMPL project keep the team together given the recent layoff happening in crypto through a multi-year recession / bear market? Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, people have been running hot. People have accelerated their burns and hired a bunch. We're doing pretty good in terms of runway and assets and stuff like that. We're not really worried about being able to keep the team together through a multi-year recession and bear market. And part of that is because, this wasn't, any sort of foresight into where the market was going to go, but we just wanted to keep the team small and high quality. And we kind of understood, what we need out of our group in order to deliver the type of product that, we're delivering. It doesn't take 100 people to create a DeFi protocol. It doesn't. It takes 100 people to maintain a high throughput Web 2 app. And so we're lucky in that we didn't aggressively hire too much, and we haven't been overexposed. So I'm glad you asked that question. Yeah, we're okay.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's a nice transition into questions, because there's a lot of them. This is like a nice text conversation going on. Well, we can start at the beginning with Merkle plants, which was, what does the team think about the model AMPL to unit of account, spot to medium of exchange, WAMPL to store of value as kind of like a gold BTC, etc.? Does this make sense? Evan, I feel like that's a good question for you.
Yeah, we talked about internally. It just kind of fits so nicely into these functions of money, unit account, medium exchange, store of value. And I can see that being something really easy for people to gravitate towards. I would say the one wrinkle there is that I think spot is actually a great store of value, right? So just because I think these kind of definitions of money have really kind of good definitions, but really kind of broad and nebulous understandings in the public vernacular. I would say, yeah, WAMPL is kind of almost like the commodity money that backs spot, which is a perpetual note. It's a claim on these senior tranches that are derivatives of AMPL, and spot is a great kind of is a better store of value actually than WAMPL is. But if you want to buy the underlying asset that produces spot, you would totally buy. It's like the gold of the system. It's like, imagine you have something like a pseudo gold backed currency. It's like you can buy the currency and use that as kind of a near term refuge from volatility, or you can buy the underlying, commodity money that backs it. And that would probably have similar long-term store value properties, in an ideal scenario to like something like Bitcoin or gold. But really, I think spot is an inflation-resistant refuge from volatility. Could it be used as a medium of exchange? Yeah, all of these tokens meet the qualifications of immediate exchange. They're all kind of divisible and fungible and portable and durable and available. They meet all the kind of technical definitions of immediate exchange. AMPL is absolutely kind of like this algorithmic durable unit of account in a very kind of straightforward way. And then, AMPL is the commodity money that kind of, it's just a wrapped AMPL really. It's a wrapped AMPL that feeds into this kind of spot node.
Yeah, AAJ had asked how those have been holding AMPL and believe in the project through all this volatility benefit from an early mover advantage on spot. And actually, there's a couple text answers to that, but if you kind of replay what Evan just said, you can grok a little bit of that as well. There was a lot of questions on some of the digital marketing stuff, and I'd just say scroll through the Discord if you found this on YouTube, and you'll be able to find what was talked about there. And definitely check out the slides, which will be on here.
The simple answer to that question is like if you're an early AMPL holder and spot starts to see, adoption or acceptance or gain market share or mind share, then the AMPL you're holding will increase in value if people increasingly demand spot. And I think as an early holder, you're also going to be able to kind of play around with whatever, functionality is first presented to the community, like the ability to rotate, the ability to mint, the ability to redeem. You could participate in any kind of future vaults or systems that are created specifically around kind of encouraging the health of spot in a kind of sustainable way. So there's kind of a lot.
Nice. Mr. Sparkles asked, I've seen a few people come in here asking questions about it. Just curious if there are integrations that might be announced with the release of Spot, or if Spot will be released and we'll have to wait to see if it's picked up.
I think the first thing that we need to do with Spot when we launch, like number one, it has to be small to begin with, right? Just to be responsible as kind of stewards of this new system. It should grow in a very controlled manner. It should be small to begin with. And so that might limit some of the integrations it can launch with. I think that what we ought to be doing is going on a roadshow and spreading this white paper and having conversations with hundreds of finance professionals who can understand it, defend it, speak to its strengths, articulate its weaknesses, compare it to other solutions in the space. And then we'd want these people to start to whisper something is different here to all of their friends. and start to gain mind share in the crypto community about this concept in general and how it might change everything in the space. From there, I think demand will maybe follow. We'll see. We could be in a pretty weak market for a while, but nonetheless, we could be in a market that is primed to disseminate these ideas for a while. And so I would kind of start there rather than going out the gate with kind of the typical playbook for launching a token or DeFi protocol, just because of how, I don't know, special we think it is anyways.
Thanks.
Yeah, on that note about the current macro market conditions, I'm really happy to see the number of people, community members here in this call that we're seeing. I think we have a really strong core community, people who are really interested in the core ideas, and the fact that everyone's still here, I think, is super encouraging. I can say that we've gone through a number of different market cycles now. I can say that I always have felt the most comfortable in bear markets, actually, because there's less hype to cut through. It seems like the quality of the work matters a lot more. The people who are still around and people who care about what they're doing. And so the quality of work just kind of goes up, and it's much easier to get things done. So I'm really happy to see the community maybe thinking along the same lines.
100%.
For sure.
We need to learn to be really happy in bull markets too, but like, it's hard to deny what Brandon said, that the better work does get done in the bear markets.
Yeah, it's a great time to make friends with people in the space. Like we obviously, a lot of people in this call have been in the space for a long time, and when there's a lot of builders heads down working on whatever the next iteration of things is, and on this front, Spot is one of the next iterations. It's interesting to see who you can pair up with, who you can meet, who's interested in what you're doing, and you kind of learn about what they're doing, and there's a lot of fluff that's out of the way. So yeah, always a good time for a building perspective.
There is something that I saw that was also encouraging. I saw Kevin at Galwa Capital tweet that like people should think and then build, right? So because before it was always just kind of like shill in a bull market and build in a bear market. And I always thought there was something wrong about that. Like I remember we had this like meetup in San Francisco, Tacorlicious, and we had printed a bunch of stickers, and one of them was like Thinkle, THINKL, kind of like hodl or doodle. And that was the same instinct, though it was a couple of years before, other folks in the market started to kind of really talk about it. Like we do need to think and then build and then show, right? Like not just like build reckless things, and not just to show reckless things, but to actually think about things, because while 95% of these assets are entirely about market making and narrative, 5% are actual financial products that can break and do require serious analysis and thought, and can stand on a great deal of kind of precedent and literature. And we don't see enough of that going on, but I'm encouraged that like at least it's shifting. Really, the last bear market was just about building. I think hopefully this one will be about thinking and building.
Yeah, I forgot about Thinkle. I really like that. Got to bring it back. Looking through more questions. Will Spot be a planned release, or will we just wake up one day and see that it's live? Well, we are talking about how some of these pieces of the information will be shared from the white paper onward. I don't know if you guys have a better answer, but
I mean, there are kind of like two parallel tasks, right? Putting together the materials to educate people about Spot. This includes the white paper and videos that we make, the website, and actually auditing and deploying, Spot contracts, seeding with liquidity, minting. Neither is really, I think they're both in a foot race. So as soon as, I guess if the materials aren't ready, but the contracts are, then it's likely we'll just rush to get the materials out there and start educating people about it. I think if the materials are ready first, then we'll take advantage of that time to kind of spread the word, because the ideas are really big, to as many people as possible.
Yeah, I think as far as the actual like deployment of the system itself, I think we'll do that as soon as we feel that it's ready. Especially if we're going with a model of keeping it small in the beginning and then growing gradually as it's able to. Then we can even be thinking about rolling out the contracts even when the UIs are not necessarily pretty looking, as long as they're sort of functional. And then is even some of the more advanced features might just be along the way in terms of the application side. So I think that's sort of the approach where we generally kind of aggregated around, just to get it out there and working to set a track record as quickly as we can.
Yeah. And yeah, to Evan's
I guess that makes sense. I think that we probably won't go broad with it until the other materials are ready, though, because like just a bunch of contracts without the context of the motivation for it, and some of the kind of thinking around why it's made the way it is, isn't going to get us as far, although it will start kind of establishing a track record, and it'll let us kind of tweak configuration, like parameters, and observe it. So I do think that makes sense.
Yeah, I think the good news is both paths, be it the materials component and the UX, UI, the white paper, all these things are being feverishly worked on, as is the code and that path as well. So yeah, working hard on them.
I think they're converging to around the same point.
Yeah.
Points anyway. So I don't think it's that.
It's going to be close. Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's going to be that off.
Yep. Okay. Manima has a question. Do we see the fourth DAO taking an active role in the development deployment of spot decision making, or will it be the DAO's responsibility to mainly support community driven projects that leverage spot in their development?
So the ultimate goal is for the fourth DAO to govern the spot system as well, in addition to managing the assets in the treasury. In the early days, I think it's very likely that we'll have a community multi-sig that's technically in charge of moving the knobs on spot until we kind of arrive at what we think is a good handoff point. It just allows us to be agile. But yeah, so fourth will be responsible for governing spot in the medium term.
Cool.
Yeah, I would say on top of that, the goal is still not to maximize governance. We still want to keep governance, as tight as is reasonable. That's sort of core to the same philosophy that we've always had around AMPL.
Yeah. Mr. Sparkles, I'm trying to go through this is actually a really nice session because there's so much discussion happening in text, but it makes it a little difficult to go through the questions. This should be an easy question to answer. Mr. Sparkles asked, will spot be airdropped to current holders to reward those who've held raw AMPL?
I'd say we haven't planned on that, but we haven't really thought that much about like a rollout plan from like distributing spot. It's more like get it out there, start tweaking the configuration parameters, make sure all the pieces are working, keep the circulating supply low, start educating people.
Yeah, airdrops can be dislocating events as well. So if a bunch of people end up with a bunch of random tokens, then they may not value them the same way as someone who goes out and mints them. And so if we want to grow the spot ecosystem, keep it healthy for as long as possible, then there might be some tension there.
Yeah, I thought it was sort of differently.
Yeah, maybe there could be like a geyser.
Yeah.
For supplying spot liquidity, and folks would, I don't know, mint some spot, put into LP pool, and get an emission of, AMPL, which they could mint spot with, or something like that.
Am I missing any other big questions here? Oh yeah, Kent 55. Question: can we get an engineer to fix the front end issues on the geyser page? There are too many complaints for quite a while now. There's been some complaints on that front.
Yeah, I think we should take a look. Even I run into like cache issues where I have to go do a Google search and remember how to clear my cache for specific sites. And so, yeah, we'll take a look for sure.
Carpe Diem asks, sorry to go off the spot topic, but I'm still a bit confused on how the WAMPL boosted pools will work. If someone deposits WAMPL into the boosted pool and Aave utilization is 100%, are you able to withdraw WAMPL from the pool? I guess, how does AMPL come into play with the boosted pools? Brandon, you got that one?
Yeah, so there might be some needed tweaking of parameters around the boosted pools, but so essentially the way it works is boosted pools are a new kind of pool that is being developed by the Balancer project. What it does is it tries to increase the capital efficiency of the assets in the system by deploying some of the inventory used for liquidity into Aave, right? So that you can generate some interest as an LP from the Aave platform in addition to the trade fees that you get. And then it also helps increase liquidity on the Aave AMPL market. Now, under the hood, the way the boosted pools work is they don't deploy all of the tokens into Aave. They deploy some percentage. And the percentage is determined based off of some risk factors like how volatile the assets are, that sort of thing. And then it will, whenever it gets too close to the threshold, then it will deploy into or remove from the Aave markets. So yeah, in the situations where you can't remove from the Aave, then it might just fail by not being able to fulfill trades if there aren't enough tokens available to do it. But ideally, we don't get into that state because we tune the risk parameters such that it's kind of avoided for as much as possible. But the boosted pools is going to be like a pool basically between Aave, AMPL, and AMPL. So you can trade back and forth between those. That's the core boosted pool, and that is used as a sub pool to other pools. So if we want to have like an AMPL ETH pool, for example, instead of just having raw AMPL ETH, you could have the boosted AMPL versus ETH. So you can reuse that boosted pool in any other pool that you wanted to on the Balancer platform.
Nice. We're running a bit late for a UI call that we're going to have. So I don't think there are any other questions we missed, but we're happy to always revisit and ping us here on Discord. I think I'm going to wrap it up for today so we can get on to that UI call. But thanks for joining. A really lively one. Great to see all the conversation. And looking forward to next week. It'll be text office hours.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks. See you guys.